Hello and welcome to the 7 Ways Podcast, Season 2 on Parsha, the weekly Torah portion. This podcast is brought to you by the 7 Ways book. Feel free to email me with questions or comments at rabbibailey@gmail.com, rabbibailey@the7ways.com. We will begin with Parsha of Lech-Lecha and jump a little bit into the Parsha of Bereishis. We have an epic statement that God says to Avraham, Lech-Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha d'shcha mibeis avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. Hashem, God said to Avraham, go yourself from your land, from the place of your birth, from the house of your father, to the land that I will show you. However, Rashi and the Midrash read these sentences in the Torah straight. They do not assume there's mixed up chronology in the Torah. And if you really look at the storyline, Avraham Avinu was essentially about 60% of the way there already to Israel. I'll try to have a map. For those of you on the podcast, I will describe it as I did in my Shoftim class. So this is Israel, and this is a huge wilderness desert. Over here is Ur Kasdim, according to most opinions. And Babylonia is here. So Avraham already was traveling all the way. He was in a place called Haran, which is up here, going over to Israel. They could not traverse the wilderness very well, so they went on this whole fertile path. King's highways were here. That's where we get King's Highway from. And really, Avraham was in a place called Haran. And if you look at the last chapter, tons of words. Haran, Acher, Nachor, lots of otherly words there. So how is it that this epic statement of Lech-Lecha is told to Avraham and it's supposed to be groundbreaking and mind-boggling? Well, Rashi, quoting the Midrash, tries to turn it into something significant. Did it not already say in the sentences in the Torah that they left there and they came to Haran? He left with his father and went to Haran already. Rather, this is what God said to Avraham: Hisrachik od misham, distance yourself more from there, v'tzei mibeis avicha, and leave your father's home. So the answer is almost like these answers that Gemara gives, and Tosfos comes and says he doesn't like it. Commentaries and the Talmud don't like them. How is it that, the answer is, well, leave your father's home. Go a little farther. Well, you left Ur Kasdim, go a little farther. You're in Haran, go a little farther. That is not really describing it as leaving your birthplace or your land. So for what reason do we consider this the Torah, the Midrash, even just reading the sentences here? Why is this Lech-Lecha such an epic statement? Furthermore, more discussions of land and famous biblical figures. We go back to the tragic story of Cain and Hevel, Cain and Able. The Midrash fills in some of the cryptic part of the sentence because it says, Cain said to Hevel when they were in the field, and he stood up and he killed him. So it doesn't really say what he said to him, but the Midrash and the way it's read is that whatever he said to him, he was talking to him, and the main thing was that he got mad and he killed him. So what were they fighting about? The Midrash says, they said, let's go and divide the whole world, 50-50. This is great. One would take the land, and one would take the personal property. Cain is going to take the land. But then they started fighting. This one said, the land that you're standing on is mine. And that one said, the clothing that you're wearing is mine. So they each could have been trillionaires if they only just let go. And Cain, it seems, would have been the real estate mogul, and Hevel would own all the personal property. They could rent things to each other. Who cares if half your life is rented? You can be a titan, filthy rich. Nope. They fought about it, and he killed him. So my first note I wrote here is, if you're a parent, the children will fight about anything, right? So, there's all these stories of people buying each child their own DVD player, their own videos. They'll still fight. However, it doesn't really satisfy the question, why do people fight, and why do they have jealousy? And why do some people not become jealous? It's a good question. Really, we should all be jealous. We should all be not jealous. It is logical or not logical. It's a strong feeling like hunger, or it is not. Furthermore, that this statement is Rabbi Yeshua of Sichnin in the name of Rabbi Levi. He said, they were going to have 50-50 split down the middle, right? The middle of the bedroom was split down the middle. Each have to have 50% of the can of soda and the cookies. They would both get 50% of the personal property. What were they fighting about? This one said, in my area, the Beit HaMikdash, the holy temple, thousands of years later, is going to be built. And this one said, no, we're going to build the temple in my place because the word Sada, a field, has to do with Beit HaMikdash, and then he killed him. Cain killed Hevel. So, are we to believe that they were prophets and they knew about the Beit HaMikdash one day? They weren't going to live that long. Why would they care so much about the Beit HaMikdash being built? What is the metaphor, the philosophical, psychological, etc., mathematical insight the Midrash is giving? Furthermore, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ami says, Al Chava Harishona. Remember that lady Lilith? Adam Harishon in the Midrash, it says he was married to a woman named Lilith and he had to divorce her. They were fighting about her. They wanted to get married. And perhaps she was the only humanoid around, even though many normal commentators say that there were other humanoids around. She was the only one that had some das, a more sophisticated way of thinking. They were trying to marry their father's ex-wife. So, is that legal? Is that distasteful? Why are they fighting about her? Can you develop some more people? Well, there were people developed. Amar Bi'aibo. Chavra Rishona Chazor Afra. God took Lilith and put her back in the dirt. She was a bad apple, man. She had to go. What were they judging about? Rabbi Huna says there was an extra twin born with Hevel. Basically, each of these boys was born with a twin sister, but Hevel, who was the younger brother, was born with two sisters. This one said, I want to take her. I'm the Bechor. Cain is the firstborn. I should take her. And this one said, I want to take her because she was born with me. And because of this, Cain killed Hevel. So, whether you understand it was, literal sisters or God put, intelligence into another person, this really needs explanation. Why can't one person be happy with one sister, the other one, why do they need to fight about it? Maybe they're going to kill each other. Maybe she should stay single until they can fight it out. You're in timeout until you can decide who's going to marry your, and it's a sister, but God made sure that their genetics spread out there. So, how are we to understand jealousy and the fundamental issue over here? So going back to Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, it brings prototypical functioning for human psychology and prayer and philosophy. There's a famous sentence here, Al ken ya'azov ish es aviv es imo. Therefore, this is a proclamation out loud by the Ruach HaKodesh, Ne'amar Cain. Rashi brings a midrash. This is like an abstract proclamation. A person cannot marry their family. Out loud statement. Therefore, a man will forsake. Here we go with some of that biblical Hebrew, right? Therefore, a man will forsake his father and his mother and cling to his wife from outside his family, and they will become one flesh. So normally, one of the most common verbs in Hebrew is yatsa, to leave. Why cannot a person just leave him? Why does he or she, I suppose, need to forsake the home? So in order to understand this, we have to get into some of the fundamental understandings of family therapy. This is my training and background, and as usual, the Torah has the psychology, and it has it better. So within family systems thinking, family therapy, it's not just about going to therapy with your family. There are some very deep and elaborate theories that are used to apply to couples, family, community and synagogue, other houses of worship, and to businesses and even society. So the original thinkers, it came from cybernetics, actually. Ironically, it came from computers to humans, and now we're putting it back into computers. These sort of systems theory. But human beings are held together according to one opinion, by emotional fields. As much as we want to be intellectual creatures, when we're with other people, there's a tremendous pressure that we can become what certain people call enmeshed, too close to our family. Even if we love and we're happy with our family, we can have groupthink, we can have an emotional field. We are always in emotional processes and we can't get around it. And what they say is the work on ourselves is called individuation. I'm working so hard to be an individual. And differentiation is that we must understand how we are different from our family. What is myself? Doesn't matter if I have the same skill set as my neighbor, I'm still a unique person. As much as I like to type people, I just want to give advice about personalities and skill sets. Each individual is unique. And it's understood that differentiation must be a constant work that someone does. Even if you stay in touch with your family and you like them, kal v'chomer, a fortiori if you don't, you sometimes actually if you don't like your family, you're actually kind of tied to them psychologically because you need to work that out in your head. So I'm going to say both ways. So whether you like your family or you don't, you were touched by your family emotionally, you were close to them, and you have to always do the work to differentiate. Who am I? It's not being different for different sake. It means be yourself. Okay. So with this understanding, we start to understand that leadership, parenting, how far a person differentiates in terms of their emotional health, how much they heal the problems of the past, they resolve the problems of the past. Problems can link previous generations. That's how much they'll be healthy and differentiated from their problems, and they'll be a better leader. This is the work of Edwin Friedman, wrote a lot about this, getting his ideas from Murray Bowen, who is the progenitor of family systems thinking, family therapy, and my co-favorite from this system, Salvador Minuchin, of course, a Yid, Ed Friedman, a Yid, a Jew, structural family therapy, understanding systems, and getting in the trenches of the therapy in order to heal people. These can be applied to businesses, etc. Minuchin talked more about enmeshment as a term. So once we understand that other humans can be great or wonderful, and whether we're close to our family or not, we must be ourselves. So this is the word in Bereishis, ya'azov, forsake. Forsake is different than leave. When you're yatsa from somewhere, you walk away. When you're forsaking somewhere, you leave it. You have to consciously leave it behind and push it to be behind. So Avraham on his journey. I forgot to describe it for the podcast. But if you imagine an upside down U, at one end of the U is like Israel. You go up to the top, that's where Haran is, and the other side is Babylonia, Bavel, and Ur-Kasdim. So Avraham Avinu was already up on the top of the arch in Haran, King's Highway, on the way to Israel. So according to this midrash, actually, Lech-Lecha is not a physical, not totally a physical place. It is Hisrachik od misham v'tzei v'sevicha. Your father comes with you to college. He comes to yeshiva, wherever you are. You made a healthy journey to leave home to become independent, and your folks are living next door. So Kadosh Baruch Hu has to say, hey, it's great that your father's here. He did tshuva at this point, and if he did, whether he did tshuva or not at this point, you have to get away from the stagnant nature of Avodah Zarah, away from the emotional system of your father. You must be a completely independent person, and it's good to be a nomad. It's good that Avraham had tents and lived by himself so he could fully delve into truth and repudiate the death cult of idolatry. And think about Lech-Lecha. This is epic. Go to yourself. It has to do with being yourself, individuating and differentiating. That is the ultimate goal. It's internal. It is the individual. It is self-oriented, not completely selfish. Now let's go to Kayin and Hevel. So Kayin means a base or to acquire. It's also part of the root of jealousy, according to the two-root theory. And Hevel does mean emptiness, Havalim, but it also means being more ethereal, ephemeral. And look who makes the argument first here. The firstborn, we know firstborns can be very psychologically, speaking of family systems, can be very strong and more conservative and being like the adults. and the youngest ones tend to rebel. Look who starts the argument here. It's Cain. Dain Amar Ara Da'at Kaim Allah Didi. Cain was the person who had the earth, and he's the one who was not differentiated. He was too physical. He was too into himself. He was too into the emotional command system. So here, people, individuals who are differentiated, are above the emotional field. If you are poorly differentiated, you rely on the approval of others, or you are more impacted by others. So think about it. Who is rich? He or she who is happy with what they have. Hasamech b'chelko. That doesn't just mean, I wish I had a bigger house and a Ferrari. Well, I'll just look at my house and try to enjoy what I have. I want a bigger collection of clothing. I'll just look at the clothing I have. That is the ultimate goal, but that's after you resolve your feelings. What are the feelings? If we're all just part of this emotional field, protoplasm, Bowen called it. If we're all just part of this mishmash of this family, I got to get ahead. I got to knock the guy down next to me. There's contentiousness here. But if you're happy with what you have, you might be a brother, sister, who says, I make enough money, I love my job, I'm going to chill because my mental health is more important than fighting here, right? People have a family business. People have a heart attack, God forbid. They're stressed out. The stress is not worth it, even if the older brother begins to make more money. Of course, it's important to have healthy conflict and try to resolve it and make fairness. But the point is the jealousy aspect of it. People who are jealous are ones who view us all as the same blob, protoplasm. People who are not jealous are happy with what they have in an existential way. And this is the next part of the Midrash. They thought about where to build the base of Midrash. Okay, this Midrash is telling us you can even have jealousy and lack of differentiation in the synagogue and other houses of worship. Lahavdil. So this is exactly the work of Ed Friedman that I've been enjoying, and others, obviously, OU, Aguda, all these Orthodox institutions are trying to advise about healthy leadership, and other denominations and religions and faiths. It's important because it's a group aspect. So you can even fight about spiritual matters. It doesn't matter. That's what the metaphor is here. Now we get into fighting about the first Chava, fighting about sisters. It's no surprise now that we're back into the family field. Let's understand this metaphor. Why do they need to seek someone who's like their father's ex-wife? So if someone is preoccupied with finding someone just like their family, just like their mother, just like someone who's easy to deal with, someone who's normal, familiar, they're not willing to go outside of themselves to do the work to fuse onto somebody else. Therefore, a man will leave and cling on to the flesh of another. There is a psychological fusion that happens at the beginning of marriage. That's why it's important to have Shana Rishona for Jews and non-Jews alike. Everybody should try to be alone during those times and get used to each other, work out differences, and bond psychologically, and then be able to find distance and difference. I have found that it's not that opposites attract, but reciprocal personalities, not too different, not too similar. People who find similar people in their youth, often, not always, and then when they're elderly age, but the reciprocal personalities, in order to find happiness, when it says they were fighting about this, it wasn't literally that they were fighting, but this is an example of what people might fight about within society, within families. And then you have the sister aspect. So if someone, the oldest one could say, oh, I'm the firstborn, I should take the second one. The next one says, no, she was born with me. She's born with me, whether it's his sister and it was allowed to be married because God cleansed the genetics, or whether it's someone who's another humanoid that was born at that time, it's familiar to him. I should be with her because she's familiar to me. She's part of my emotional field. I know this woman. And then Hevel says, no, life is a power struggle. I'm the oldest. I will layeth the smacketh down, and I will take this woman. Though it's exactly the same thing. Lack of differentiation of emotional health. So the lesson is we must constantly work to be ourselves. That simple lesson my mother taught me as an individualist and an artist. It remains true, one of the most powerful messages. And also my father taught me as a musician and a teacher. It turns out to be not a simplistic hippie message, but the most powerful message of all. Lech-Lecha, go to yourself. Even though you have a self-interest, Abraham's self-interest of making sure his family was good and kosher, away from idolatry, paradoxically leads to a nation of healthy people. Each person has dozens of descendants and can build a nation. So the ultimate act of selflessness is to first be self-oriented and to go to yourself and to learn how to forsake the bad habits of your family of origin, which impacts you to this day, and to develop your own system, even if you're in touch with them, and to bond with your new family that you develop, and to make a healthy congregation or find a healthier one, to make a healthy business from the beginning or find a healthier one or fix it, and ultimately to help society. This was the 7 Ways Podcast, Season 2, on the Parsha, the weekly Torah portion. This podcast is brought to you by the 7 Ways book, available online, on demand, or a signed copy. Let me know. Rabbi Bailey at the7ways.com. Rabbi Bailey at gmail.com. Feel free. Let me know what you think about this, and look forward to forthcoming podcasts, God willing, to continue the ideas from the book, finally, after all these years.